I realized actually when I was doing this, there's a lot of things that I do that I think is very common and it's kind of obvious. But then when I take a step back and see people who are obviously in the same position as me, I find that not everybody has the same level of clarity on what to do, and the fact that you don't really need to like start from scratch and start from like the bottom basically if you're doing a career transition, and that you can actually come in at the same or similar levels as to where you are in your other career. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So first key thing that I want to talk about is my strategy. I'm going to talk about this to start off this video because I think it shaped my entire world when I looked about my career. I had this almost like profound conversation with a friend of mine where somebody had given her a template for thinking about career and like career changes that or like what she wants to do that really changed her life, and I'm going to tell it to you today as well. So it's this template where you literally have to sit down and think about what you want to do, because this is more so important for people who have too many options rather than too few options, although it might go the other way as well. I was working in an engineering job where I was interfacing and liaising and collaborating with so many different departments and functions that were almost like separate careers on their own. And if I wanted to, I could have gone through those different routes as well. So I was honestly feeling quite overwhelmed about what I wanted to do in general, tech or no tech, engineering, no engineering. I was just like, what do I want to do? And I'll give you some examples. So I was working on a production site, a production facility where it was a refinery, right? And I had a lot of interface with supply chain. Supply chain on itself is a very different career path, right? It has nothing to do with engineering, to be honest, although there are transferable skills there. So my question to myself was like, right, can I do supply chain? I was working with people who were in like, what people think engineering is, it's almost like maintenance and thinking of like going down the actual physical equipment side of things. And it's like, right, is that something that I want to do? I was working on operations, which is like your day-to-day, like responsibility of the operations and the running of the facility. So you have like your team leaders and stuff like that. And I actually did have the option of going sorry, my nose is itchy. Did have the option of going via that route. It's like, right, is there something I want to do? There was like process safety, for example, which is looking at specifically the safety part of like individual processes and apply, which is a very different career. So you can see how I had so many different options of what to do, and this is just to name a few. So many different options, and I honestly felt like I was like constantly starting from scratch. And it's like, I don't know what I need to do. I don't even know, like, where do I fit in? Like, where do I go? Do I focus on this? Do I focus on that? So I had too many options of what I could do. If you watch my last video, I talked about how I wanted to do chemical engineering when I was a kid because I realized that it gave me so many different options, and it's like a great, almost like starting point to so many different careers. I highly recommend it from that perspective. But at the same time, it meant that when I came out of that degree and I was doing this, because I had so many other options, I really had to think about what I wanted to do and spend some time doing that, which is what I wanted to talk about today. So that strategy in terms of that template was about sitting down and saying, okay, I had developed the mindset of the fact that, which is what I talked about in my last video, developed the mindset that I might not be doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life, okay? And when I think about what I want to do for the rest of my life, I think it gets very overwhelming to think about 30, 40 years from now. Because at the time when I was thinking about this, I was only 24, 25, right? I started my career really early, so when my age sounds young is because at this point in time, at the time of making this video, I've been working in industry specifically for 8 to 9 years. So I was a little bit of an early starter in terms of my career, so don't let my age fool you, okay? But I was like, if I think about what I want to do, at the end of my life, basically what I want to retire in, it's too overwhelming. And if I spend that time trying to figure that out, I will just collapse in the overwhelm. So what this sort of like strategy teaches you to do is to think about 5 years from now. I know it's not like groundbreaking or anything, but it's more specifically around what jobs do you find yourself, like what do you find in the next 5 years? So it's 2025 right now. So in 2030, think about what would you want to see yourself doing, right, in 2030. And you have to restrict yourself to 3 different things. I think it's great to have options because the reality is that if you're doing one particular thing, and if you're sure of it, sure, this video is not for you. But it's more for the people who are like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. From all of those different options that you have, you could really hone it down to 3 different options of like, what do I actually care about? So I'll talk you through my thinking process so that you can see what mine is like. So for me, it was like, okay, I really like making things better, right? So one of the different options that I could see is continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is such an interesting concept because it literally transfers to so many different things, so many different industries. But it's looking at how can you, it's like entering a career where you're systematically looking at different processes and creating solutions to optimize them. That was what I was doing as a process engineer. That is what I am doing now as an analyst, working in tech in my company. So they're completely different industry. I work in a finance firm now. I used to work on a manufacturing site. Very different industry, totally different vibe, but the concept is the same. And what led me to this was that I really, really enjoy making things better. So now when I think about that, but what is continuous improvement? A lot of different job titles that embody this career of continuous improvement, they don't have continuous improvement in their job titles. So it's just going out to do, and this is where ChatGPT nowadays is so helpful. You can ask ChatGPT and say, okay, I really enjoy making process improvement, blah, blah, blah. What are the different career or job titles that you think that I could be looking for? So for me, without ChatGPT at the time, obviously, it was like business analyst, for example, is a continuous improvement based job. Operations analyst is a continuous improvement sometimes based job. For example, process engineering is a continuous improvement based job. What else was there again? Business transformation, operations transformation, change management. They're all like continuous improvements where you're looking at how to improve things essentially. So there's so many different job titles within that. And I just literally found quite a few of them and I said, okay, this is like the field. I want to go into like a continuous improvement focused field as an example of one of my 3 different options of what I see myself doing in the next 5 years. The second thing that I really care about is sustainability. And that was one of the career options that I could go into when I was working as an engineer. I had a lot of projects that were so sustainability heavy, looking at how to reduce waste and designing processes that were intrinsically more sustainable than others. And there's a lot of stuff basically, okay, that goes into sustainability and having a career in sustainability. And that was always one of the pillars, so I like to call them, of my career that I still think it would be nice to break into. Unfortunately, I don't really see how that's going to happen because I find that it's such a... Every time that I've tried, it just hasn't worked out. But I find it to be quite an interesting area of my career that I really want to go into. And then the last one was still like hardcore engineering, focusing specifically though on energy transition or just energy in general. So I would be happy, and I told myself that I would love to continue doing engineering because I mentioned that I really love engineering. I love like creating like new designs to solve, particular like problem or like process or product need or whatever it is. So I still wanted to continue in that way. So you can see how I'd come up with like 3 different sort of like career paths that I wanted to follow. And then now it was just a case of, okay, what does a job title look like in this career in continuous improvement or process business transformation? What does a career option look like in sustainability, and what sort of job titles basically should I be looking out for? And then what sort of job titles should I be looking out for as well if I wanted to do a career in energy as an engineer? Again, those ones kind of obvious, it's just more company focused. And then when you have those 3 different pillars, you think of yourself, okay, in 5 years time, what sort of like job title do I want to have around that? And then you can, if you get what I mean, you can see where, okay, this is what I need to do. So that was a very, very useful exercise that I did. I highly recommend it for people who were struggling. Because I think nowadays, a lot of us as humans and a lot of jobs are not as, they're not as like hardcore as they used to be, instead of like a one straight road, like, okay, you're a nurse, for example, and that's kind of like all that you do. But nowadays, lots of people are using different skills that are very transferable to lots of different jobs. And so I find that if you think about what you do, if you think about the different, don't even just think about yourself, think about the people that you work with at work. What are they doing, right? What careers are they doing? And then you can see from this, oh, I know this person is doing this. So therefore, because I am liaising with this person, I naturally have some certain skills that is like attributable. Is that a word that you can attribute to that particular area as well? And then bring that in and say, okay, if I was going to do this, what does that job in that area look like? So that I found was very, very, very helpful for me to do that exercise. Talking about transferable skills specifically, I think is very important because transferable skills is one of those words that people like to throw around, but they don't really say, okay, exactly what it is. And I'm going to tell you. So for me as an engineer, for example, I did a lot of project management. Am I a project manager? Unfortunately now I kind of am. But from before, like, am I really like a hardcore project manager? No. I used to give all the project managements all the information that they need. I used to fill out their templates, so I know exactly everything that they used to do. I used to also manage my own projects as well, but usually like for smaller stuff. Whenever we had the bigger project management, I would work very closely with the project managers. So that means that I have a skill in project management. That is a transferable skill. A project is a project, whether it's in a hospital, whether it's in the CIA, whether it's in wherever. A project, quite frankly, is literally a project. So that is a transferable skill that you can take from working in a hospital to working in a finance company. Literally the same thing. Another transferable skill that I believe that I have is obviously engineering I feel like it's such a cop out, and I don't know. I was thinking like, oh, well, engineers have so many different skills. So that's why we're, always, even the finance companies love engineers, for example, just because there's so many transferable skills, especially like chemical engineers that we pick up that is transferable to different areas. But for example, I did a lot of work with process monitoring, right? So I would look at our processes literally every single week. I had different sheets that I developed and designed to give people to mark out like the different times that the plant was running, things like that. So like hardcore like process monitoring and seeing how processes are running. And then at the end of every week, I'll put those into like a report and then do lots of different charts and say, okay, this is how it's performing. And I had different standards that I set as well. That is literally just data. Okay, it's data. It's data monitoring. A lot of stuff that I was doing on Excel, for example, I'm really good at Excel. Again, that's another transferable skill. But that was also one of the things where I was just like, okay, this is a transferable skill. And I'm now comfortable that it doesn't matter if it's in finance, which is where I am in now, but if I'm in finance, data is data, okay? And yes, okay, there's particular quirks around the data and what the actual data is, but it doesn't really matter if I'm looking at how many milligrams per liter of, whatever the substance is in a particular flow of a line, or whether I'm looking at, how many, I don't know, thousands of, it doesn't matter, right? Regardless of what it is, the data is the data, is the point that I'm trying to make there. So that is a transferable skill. So in terms of selling yourself, I would then go and say, okay, I have expertise in sort of like data management, data analytics, data visualization. And that's the word that you would then use to describe to somebody how you can handle data. That is another transferable skill. So think about when you go down the list of thinking about the three different, or the option, and it might not be three, you might maybe like more options, it might be five, maybe it might be the one. But when you think about the job that you want to do, and then you think about, oh, okay, if this is the job that I want to do, what are the different skills that they are asking for? Every job description has them. So go down the list of like the different jobs, check on LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn is a massive platform, but read, Indeed, all these different job websites. You can literally just Google them. I don't need to tell you, you know them, right? Google them, go into, when you ask ChatGPT, okay, what different, let's say with continuous improvement, what sort of job titles do I need, or can I work in, or should I be looking at if I want to focus on, a job that's centered around continuous improvement. And let's say it comes up with a business analyst. You go into LinkedIn and say, okay, type in business analyst as a job, right? And you can ask ChatGPT, what does a business analyst do? And it'll tell you. But I find that it's better to go into LinkedIn or Indeed, for example, and saying, okay, looking for a business analyst job, and then looking at the job description and look at what they've written down, and then say, okay, if they're asking for a business analyst and they want somebody who's able to solve problems, I can promise you, in whatever job that you're doing, you are solving problems, right? So you're just need to be able to show how you've systematically solved a problem in the job that you're doing, right? Of course, I'm using like very lazy examples here, but I feel like the same concept applies regardless of what your particular area is. Let's say that you are a teacher, right? And it's like being able to, for example, manage stakeholders is one of the job responsibilities in a new job that you're looking for. Parents are difficult people, okay? And as a teacher, your parents, for example, or your other teachers, or your head teacher, for example, is your stakeholder, right? So that is literally, you can think about how the work that you're doing with managing parents, maybe their expectations for their kids, for example. Again, I don't really know too much what a teacher does in that like stakeholder section, but you are literally working with people. And so I find that a lot of people will put down what they're doing because like, oh, it doesn't fit into the big word that you're seeing on the job title that you have, but literally it's all just big words. So a teacher, a parent, for example, in a classroom or, in a classroom teaching environment is a stakeholder in the same way that a client, for example, that I'm building something for is a stakeholder. So don't worry about that too much. You just look at the different job titles and say, okay, what can I see that these are the skills that they're asking for? And then look at those different skills and ask yourself a general question like, okay, they're looking for somebody who's a problem solver. What problem have I solved in the job that I'm doing? And then how can I show that, how can I explain that basically in a agnostic sense? And I think this is the bit that is very, very important, and this is where those big words like stakeholder, for example, becomes important. I find that people get carried away in like the naming or like the detail of what they do, right? So it doesn't matter, like I said, if you're a teacher and you're working with stakeholders, it doesn't matter that those stakeholders are parents, for example. You can clean out the word like working with parents, yes, lovely if you're applying for a teacher role, but if you're now going from teaching to doing something else, you have to swap that word parents for stakeholders. I really had, a really good example is a job that I was working in the factory. I had a video about that. When I was 17, I started working in a food production factory, and I literally turned my, turned my thing of like, I was, literally when you're doing when you're on in the factory like working on the different things, right? For example, I'm making a roulade as an example. I'm looking for defects when it's going through as one of the lines that I was working in. Yeah, you just need to look, okay, is this one okay, is it not okay, then you put it to that side. If it's okay, you put it to that side. But I changed the word to saying that I was literally monitoring the products for defects. It's like, and like quality control. So that is a way that you can turn, it's again a transferable skill of what you actually did, delete all the words that make it so specific to your industry, and then use words that are broader and wider: quality control, stakeholder management, problem solving, project management, those sort of things, and then turn that into whatever industry that you are looking to go into. One thing that I do want to talk about as well is training. So you may or may not need training to go into the industry that you need to do. I literally have my friend who lives with me. She literally did a psychology degree and she now works in data. So when I'm telling you that you don't need to I don't think she did any special training. She didn't do none of that, right? But it's literally just looking at, so when I was doing psychology, I was doing a lot of statistics, right? And then I have now applied those different statistics in these different areas. And then now I'm going to, you get what I mean? You can just like transfer that. But you can also do training. If it makes you feel comfortable, you can find a training, for example, that is related to what you're doing. So with mine, for example, I would say a training that maybe some people might find helpful that I mentioned is that I have a Lean Six Sigma qualification, which is a methodology when it comes to continuous improvement. So an employer can see that and say, oh yeah, she also has, in addition to how I've cleaned out what I've done to make it agnostic to the new industry, I also have this training certification, although you do not have to do that. I didn't have to do any training. You don't have to go to any new university. I find that people get overly obsessed with like training when it comes to tech and like changing careers. And I find that training is good, but seeing behind the scenes of people who hire and like seeing behind the scenes of like hiring process, I don't know that it is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I find that if anything, I use training for like to actually learn like whatever is on the job. I wouldn't necessarily do training. I haven't had to do any training to get a job so far other than my degree. So I don't think that you need a new degree. I've seen so many people who transition into different fields without doing any new degree, without doing any new training. You just literally have to be able to look at where you're coming from, right? And then just agnosize, I'm making up words now, but like clean up the language around what you're doing to make it into the different field. But I feel like I've explained a lot about that already. I find that as well when doing a career transition, the one thing that I will have to say is that you have to be willing to do it. We used to call it like a sideways move. So when you do a career move, a lot of the times we always want to do a career move up. So up the ladder. So you're going from a process engineer to a senior engineer. You're going from band 1 to band 2, for example. But when you're making a career change, you have to be okay with making a sideways move, which is where you are literally at the exact same level, sometimes maybe ever so slightly lower, but you're moving across industries, right? So you're not going upwards, but you're going across. And I find that sometimes this is where people's pride sometimes can get in the way, where you're thinking, oh, like for example, I could have thought, you know, I'm a senior engineer in my current company, so I have to have a role that, you know, already has senior and has like these different titles. But you have to be able to think about what exactly it is that you want. For me, my financial situation was more was what I was looking for in my next career step, not so much as the title. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I love a good title. I love a good job title. But as I said in the previous video that I've done, it's like I had to like isolate myself or remove myself from the obsession with job titles. So you just have to be willing that you might be coming in as like a senior consultant, for example, but because you want to go into a different industry, maybe you come in and on like a slightly different role, but find and anchor yourself to the things within that transition that are important to you. If it's a job title, then that's fine. Although I would say probably don't be obsessed with job title as much. But for me, it's what I'm looking to learn, and also the money. Basically the money was important to me, and just making sure that I'm still getting that increase. When I look at my job title at the moment, will I say that I'm overly impressed with it? I'm honestly not. It's an analyst role, and I'm still coming into this world. I'm still trying to figure out what the word analyst means, because it actually previously meant nothing to me. But because I got all the other things that I wanted out of the career move, I was like, okay, I will take the job title. So hopefully that has helped you. If you're navigating a career change, leave me some words in the comments. I'm always happy to encourage people. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I shall see you somewhere in the space sometime soon. Make sure to leave a comment, like, and just follow my channel in general. I do travel a lot. I feel like I've been getting away with doing a lot of travel content, but I have a lot of stuff off my sleeve that I do career-wise, and I do want to share those as well, just to help anybody else, or to just have a conversation with people who are in a similar life situation as me. So thank you. Bye bye.